Now, talk to me about the first moment you guys walk into a jail. Had you been into any kind of prison or jail before?
I've been arrested in England before.
For
I was arrested on some garbage, and I was only held for a day or so. But
first day in jail in Romania, what was it like? Walk us through. What's going through your mind? You walk into the cell. What happens?
jail is just condensed life. You need to be strong physically so no one else picks on you, and you need to be strong mentally so you don't pick on yourself. And I was also pretty understanding that if you show respect to people, they're going to show respect back to you. I wasn't scared. Part of me was a little bit nervous, but my genuine concern was for everybody else on the outside. I know everyone was worried about me, but I was worried about all the people I have to pay, and my kids and my families and my mother and everyone else, and all the heat they're getting and the smoke they're getting, and them all being upset. The first day I walked in there was still a chance that I would be out relatively soon. So I thought that this is a temporary hiccup and it's garbage and it's something I have to deal with quickly. It was only probably after a full week that it really began to settle in that I'm going to be stuck there for a long time. And I was hearing a lot of horror stories from people around me who had been stuck in the system for years.
And they gave you no context of how long you'd be there or nothing?
Everyone was telling me I was going to be there for years.
Really?
Other guys in my room when I first went in there, all of them had been there for between 1.5 and 4 years without trial.
And when you walk in there, is everybody like, holy shit, Andrew Tate's in the house? Or was there not that kind of reaction?
They knew who I was, but not really. I think after a lot of time in jail, maybe not in a Western jail, but in a jail in this part of the world, you lose a lot of your, what's the word I'm looking for? Sentience. You lose a lot of your sentience because the only way to survive it is to just be half asleep.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're kind of numb
and not even asleep physically, but just mentally half asleep. They were like, "Oh, Andrew Tate." I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't. No one cared.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, just like welcome to the club. You got shafted by the system.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because systems are imperfect because they're run by people and people are fallible.
Right.
And of course, when you call the police after someone's committed a murder, you want that murderer to go to jail, and the judicial system does its job. Some people who do bad things are in jail, which is what you want. But there's also a bunch of people in jail who are just in jail for some garbage. And of course, the person you're asking why they're there, are you hearing the real version of events? Who knows?
Sure.
But in every single jail on earth, I would argue there's a percentage of the population who shouldn't be there. There's at least between 1%, perhaps up to 30, 40, 50% of men sitting in a room stuck there who shouldn't be in jail if all was fair in the world, and the world's not fair. And after I started to realize I might be there for years because a lot of the people in there, some of them, and I won't tell their stories out of respect, were there who had done nothing wrong and they'd been stuck for years. My concerns weren't for me, my concerns were for my empire on the outside, because as a man, you have a lot of people who depend on you.
What were the conditions like inside there?
They were exactly how you'd imagine a Romanian jail to be. I mean, Romania is technically a poor country. If you actually ever visit here, you'll see a lot of fast cars and Lamborghinis and nightclubs and bottles, and there's a big wealth divide. There's a lot of money here. But technically, on paper, in general, it's one of the poorest countries in Europe. How can a politician justify to his constituents that he wants to send money to improve the jail system when they have medical problems with their healthcare system and the roads have holes? They have other issues to fix. The pensions need paying. I don't think they put any money into that jail since it was built. Wow. During communism. And a jail in communism is a dungeon to go and die in. And there's also the starkest reality was that there is no mental health divide between the criminal justice system and the mental health system in poorer countries. It's probably not Romania, it's probably most poor countries. In a poor country, they don't have the money to work out if you are a criminal or if you're mentally ill. You're just not doing what you're supposed to do and you're a menace to society, so you all go to jail. So there's a huge mental health problem, and I'd argue it's probably like that in a lot of poor countries.
Was there multiple people in the cell with you, or were you solo before being Tristan in the cell?
So it was, at first my brother and I were separate. I was in the room with 3 other guys, 3 other men. And my concern initially was to make sure there was going to be no physical confrontation, but I'm pretty good at picking up vibes, and I understood pretty quickly that I'd be okay. Tristan had a semi-different experience. And then after 2 weeks, I was put in the same cell as Tristan. We were put together. And we were put together so they could bug the cell and listen to us.
Oh, and you guys, of course, knew that.
Yeah, we knew that instantly.
You're probably fucking around.
But we were, yeah, of course, but we were glad that they put us in there. And I've told my story about Ricky Tan and Rush Hour and how we started talking about all these imaginary crimes. And we did it, one was to upset them, but two, our logic was if we make them feel like they're getting something out of this, they'll keep us in the same room. And it's better. So let's keep alluding to these crime bosses in Hong Kong. And we kept describing the Rush Hour plots. So they're listening in, calling the Hong Kong authorities probably. Yeah. But I mean, I'll never forget the day they told me I was going to leave jail. I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget that emotion.
Well, in there, you know, I know there's a famous question where someone said, you know, Andrew, did you cry in jail?
Yeah.
And you said?
I said, tears ran down my face, but I did not cry.
And what did you mean by that?
Because it's a unique feeling of frustration. Unless you've ever been in that scenario, you never would have experienced it in your life. You're put in a room, the door is locked, okay. And for the first few days, you're in jail, whatever. But after a couple of weeks, you just look at the door and you're like, how can I not leave this room? Why can't I go outside of this door? It's in all the other scenarios in your life where perhaps you're put in a room, you have to argue with your parents, or you've got a job and you can't finish till a certain time, but you could leave the room. If you actually wanted to walk out, you could walk out. There may be consequences, but you could.
Sure. Yeah.
But in jail, you actually can't.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating. And I think my brother actually did better than me, because my brother, the whole 3 months in jail, didn't make a single phone call. Didn't call anyone once. Didn't care. I was calling people, trying to check on them, making sure that everything was okay. And I thought that would make my life better and everyone else's life better, but it did the opposite, because it made me very concerned. And it's also amazing the difference between men and women, because I'd call like my guys or men who I rely on, or people who I do business with, whatever. And they'd be like, don't worry, we got it. You just worry about you. We got it, we got it, we got it. You'd call the women, and the women in your life obviously have been depending on you while you're free. And they just start getting upset, crying. Oh, but what if you're there for years, and how will I pay for this, or what's going to happen about this, or what if, you know, the kid, and da-da-da. And all of their negative emotion, they're not cerebral enough to go, he's using his 20 minutes jail phone call. Yeah. And instead of making him happy, I'm just going to trauma dump him. Mm-hmm. And it's quite a surreal experience to be in a jail cell, counting the cockroaches on the roof, on a broken payphone, trying to convince some girl in the free world that she's going to be okay. You're like, you're playing the other side. You're like, don't worry, it's going to be fine. Yeah. And you're the therapist in the jail, which shows the reality of masculine versus feminine when things get hard anyway. Yeah. But that day I was particularly upset, but it wasn't about me. I never felt sorry for myself at any point. I never looked around at any point and said, oh, this is unfair. I can't believe this happened to me. Even though it is unfair, and even though it is a matrix attack, that's not a paradigm I operate under. I only looked around me and said, I need to get out of here because there's other things I have to do, and I'm worried about everyone else. I really wasn't that concerned. If you would have said to me when I was in jail, Andrew, you're going to be here for 10 years, but X amount of $1 million a month will be generated, and these people will be paid for, and this is the life they're all going to live, that I really would have been like, okay, and I would have done my time. It's concern for other people as opposed to over myself. I wasn't worried about me so much.